Broadcast Center in Los Angeles. This is KCAL 9 News at 9.
Well, now 9 o'clock, crunch time in California's race for governor. Candidates make their final push today ahead of tomorrow's primary.
And a major disaster in Guatemala, the race to find survivors of a massive volcanic eruption.
But tonight we begin with breaking news involving former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Special counsel Robert Mueller is now accusing Manafort of attempting to tamper with witnesses in his federal tax and lobbying case, and he could go to jail until he faces trial.
And tonight, local Congressman Adam Schiff said Manafort is likely fearful that he won't get a presidential pardon.
This kind of a desperate action to try to violate the terms of your release and interfere with other witnesses says to me that he is really concerned about his jeopardy, about going away for a long time, willing to risk being caught witness tampering in a case where they're watching every move. So it tells me that he's not certain he'll get a pardon.
Now, a federal judge could revise the terms of Manafort's release or revoke it entirely. That means Manafort could be sent to jail immediately until his trial.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Jeff Vaughn.
And I'm Crystal Cruz, in tonight for Lena Wynn. Now to the race for governor of California. The primary is tomorrow.
That's right. Voters will select the top 2 candidates who will then face off come November. KCAL 9 political reporter Dave Bryan joins us now to show us the front runners and what message they are sending to the voters on this night before the election.
Night before. They were everywhere today. And if you don't believe, if you believe that is, the experts, they say that this is really a battle for the second spot, The battle for the second spot in tomorrow's primary for governor is literally going down to the wire, with several major candidates still holding campaign events on primary day. That's tomorrow. And at least one of those candidates scheduled events late into Monday night, one last attempt to convince undecided voters to go their way. With the hours running short before the in-person primary voting begins, former L.A. Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa told his supporters in Whittier at a Monday night rally that the difference between him and the other candidates is that he's actually done the heavy lifting while they have just talked about it.
I think the biggest difference between me and the other candidates is the track record. I already said it. Built 3 light rail lines and 1 busway, nearly doubled the school graduation rate.
But trailing in recent polls, Villaraigosa was scheduled to campaign late into the night. On the final primary campaign day of the 2018 race for governor, Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom barnstormed the state from San Diego to San Francisco. At a rally of supporters with the Domestic Workers Union, Newsom said his own party, the Democrats, have some serious work to do.
I think the issue of affordability, and I think our biggest critics are right about that. I'm a Democrat, and I'm going to take some count. That's happened on our watch. The homeless issue is out of control. It's unacceptable.
Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Newsom campaign volunteers were working hard at a text bank, where instead of phoning voters, they sent them text messages.
We're going to get to about 500,000 probably today, not just here in San Francisco, but we've got all over the state, all over the country, really.
Thank you all for being here. Sorry I'm late.
Republican John Cox actually cast his ballot at an early voting station in the San Diego area. And he told reporters a Republican could do a better job running California than the Democrats, and he's the one who could get it done.
It's about time the people of this state got a better job done by their leaders, and that's what we're going to get in November when they elect me as governor.
State Treasurer John Chung brought his campaign to San Francisco's Chinatown.
To provide the leadership that's required for the future of the state of California.
Now, the 2 other major candidates for governor were also making last-minute appeals to voters. In fact, Republican State Assemblyman Travis Allen still has 3 more rallies tomorrow on primary day in Riverside, downtown L.A., and Santa Ana. And former Superintendent of Public Instruction Delane Easton also has 3 campaign events on Tuesday, starting in San Diego and ending up at a coffee shop on Wilshire Boulevard in L.A. Back to you guys.
Dave, let's expand a little bit more on what you said about this. Appears to be the race for number 2 and not for that number 1 vote getter, the poll getter, if you will.
That's right.
Is that going to be disruptive at all tomorrow, you think? Or you think there's going to be some races that will come up as a surprise?
I think there will be some. I really do. I'm not sure if it's because of the top 2 system or not, but remember, what we have been seeing is that candidates of the same party are viciously attacking one another in some cases in order to get that number 2 spot. And by the same token, you also see, for example, in the governor's race, you saw a situation where one of the candidates, allegedly, was criticizing a candidate from the other party because he wanted the candidate from the other party to get second place rather than another Democrat. So, yeah, this thing is changing hour by hour.
And a lot of money being spent. It's not even November yet.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah. We'll, of course, have a lot of coverage tomorrow, complete coverage here on KCAL 9 of the primary. Stay with KCAL 9 News, KCAL9.com for analysis and results as well.
And now to the disaster unfolding in Guatemala, where the Fuego volcano erupted, burying dozens of people in ash and searing mud flows. At least 65 people are dead, but that number is expected to get much higher.
That's right. More than 3,200 people have been evacuated from areas near that volcano. Rescue operations continue tonight. This is all happening not far from Guatemala's capital. Don Daler tonight with more.
Orange, superheated gas and rocks shot into the sky and poured down the mountain, reportedly wiping out entire villages. The eruption sent ash as far as 40 miles away. In the first few hours, the ash and mud remained so hot, rescuers had a difficult time reaching victims, some of whom could be heard crying out for help. The rapidly moving mixture of gases and volcanic matter, known as pyroclastic flows, reached 1,300 degrees in some places. By the time first responders reached victims, it was often too late. Dozens were either burned to death or asphyxiated by the deadly fumes, including these children. A rapidly rising mud flow destroyed a highway bridge, and a once pristine nearby golf course was covered in dark gray ash and mud.
Volcano is behind me.
Manuel Cobar is there. Can you describe what you saw?
I can dead people. I can see very people hurt. And the situation is very sad.
Eugenia Garcia Uspatan lost all but 2 of her family members. I only managed to find 2 children last night, she says, but my 2 female daughters, my grandson, and my son are missing, together with my entire family. Sunday's 16-hour-long eruption was the most violent in more than a century.
In Hawaii, lava continues to shoot out of the ground near the Kilauea volcano. Over the weekend, lava cut off the final escape route for a dozen people who refused to leave. Several of them have since been airlifted out. Kilauea has been erupting for more than a month.
Well, the hunt right now for man suspected in as many as 6 murders in Arizona came to a violent end today. We're told by police the man shot himself as police SWAT moved in. Maria Villarreal has details tonight from Scottsdale.
Dwight Lamont Jones was tracked down to this extended stay hotel in northern Scottsdale at around 5 a.m. when he started shooting.
The SWAT team set up on the room. They were able to enter using robot and other tactics and determined that the suspect had killed himself with an apparent gunshot wounded.
Police believe renowned psychiatrist Dr. Stephen Pitts was Jones's first victim last Thursday. On Friday, 2 paralegals turned up dead, Valerie Sharp and Laura Anderson. The next morning, police found hypnotherapist and life coach Marshall Levine murdered. Police believe Jones is connected to all 6 murders. Each victim had a connection to his 2009 divorce and custody battle.
Here's open letter to my son.
Jones posted disturbing audio clips on YouTube that have since been removed. In one of them, he accuses his ex-wife's attorney of spreading lies.
Her attorney told her to plant those tapes, do all the devious she did.
Today is not a success story, but it is a story that has closure.
Vidya Villarreal, Scottsdale, Arizona.
And the Supreme Court ruled today in favor of a Colorado baker who refused to bake a wedding cake for a same-sex couple. The court said the Colorado Civil Rights Commission showed hostility toward the baker based on his religious beliefs. The ruling was 7-2 and added the commission violated his First Amendment rights. The court did not rule on the broader question of how a state should balance anti-discrimination laws with a person's right to religious freedoms.
Do you feel like you owe her an apology?
Decades after the affair, former President Bill Clinton says Monica Lewinsky will not be getting an apology. More from this interview still ahead.
And no longer MIA or missing in action. Melania Trump reemerges at a White House event weeks after being out of the public eye.
And the breakthrough treatment for breast cancer who saved one woman's life. Can it save yours?
And take a few seconds to follow us on social media. We're CBS LA on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. President Donald Trump called off tomorrow's White House celebration of the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. The move comes after the league instituted a ban on players kneeling during the national anthem. The president issued a statement today saying the entire team would not make it because some disagreed with his insistence that all players stand for the anthem. So instead of hosting only part of the team, he canceled their visit. The president says he'll host a different kind of ceremony, one to honor our country and its heroes. And First Lady Melania Trump made her first public appearance today since having kidney surgery more than 3 weeks ago. She attended a White House event honoring families of fallen service members. No media cameras were allowed at the event out of respect for their families. But the First Lady posted these Twitter photos of her sitting next to the president at today's event. She said she was honored to pay tribute to our fallen heroes. The First Lady hasn't been seen since May 10th, raising speculation on her whereabouts and even some conspiracy theories.
Well, there is big news tonight about experimental treatment for breast cancer that has saved a woman's life. Dr. John LaPook calls it a game changer.
They say into each life a little rain must fall.
Rain's coming, big rain.
For 52-year-old Judy Perkins, it's been a monsoon.
I had a mastectomy. I had all my lymph nodes out. 10 years later, 2013, I felt another lump on the same side, and this time it ended up being stage 4. So I entered the world of cancer patient, serious cancer patient.
Despite hormonal and chemotherapy, by 2015, the cancer had spread to her chest and liver.
I came to realize that I was going to die, and that's where my mind was. You know, I felt bad for my family, but I was grateful for the life I had had.
But then she found Dr. Steven Rosenberg at the National Institutes of Health.
So we're looking at lymphocytes.
He's a pioneer in harnessing the immune system to fight cancer. Genetic mutations in the cancer cell are the trigger causing those cells to grow out of control. Rosenberg's new approach is to find the few immune cells already in the body that can see those genetic mutations and multiply those cells into an army of cancer killers. And this is how you find the needle in the haystack, the one cell that can recognize the mutation.
Exactly right.
In a lab, Rosenberg's team grew those few immune cells into billions, then injected them into Perkins's bloodstream. There, just like the immune cells appearing white in this picture, they ganged up to attack cancer cells.
I think it had been maybe 10 days since I'd gotten the cells, and I could already feel that tumor starting to get soft, and I said, oh, it's working.
In 10 days?
Well, by then, I was like, dang, this is really working.
Inside the liver are all of these tumor deposits that are rapidly growing. But as you can see, every one of these lesions has disappeared.
2.5 years later, Perkins has no evidence of cancer. Rosenberg believes the army of immune cells are still at work.
Circulating in her body are large numbers of the cells we administered to her 2.5 years ago.
And that's fundamentally totally different from hormonal therapy, chemotherapy.
That's correct. This is just one treatment that's necessary because the cells are alive. They're part of, they are Judy Perkins.
Exciting news. Now, Dr. John LaPook says this type of immunotherapy is still in its infancy, but Judy's success could open the door to use this kind of treatment for others and their solid tumors in the lung, colon, and elsewhere. This is, of course, separate good news from another new study that found some women diagnosed with breast cancer can do just as well by taking hormone blockers alone without needing chemotherapy.
Sounds like a bit of a game changer there, right? Now talking about weather, a little steamy out there today. Evelyn, what's it look like? And still ahead, an FBI agent's dance moves, these right here, could land him in legal trouble.
And a candidate's questionable parade appearance, his unusual accessory that is now stirring controversy. Did you hear that blast? Yep. Off-duty FBI agent accidentally discharged his gun in a nightclub, and the bullet hit a man. Video shows him doing the backflip. The gun falls out of his holster and then goes off. As the FBI agent tries to pick it up, the bullet hit a man in the leg. We're told the victim is going to be okay. Now, the FBI agent was taken to police headquarters for questioning. The Denver DA will determine then if he should face charges.
And a political candidate is under fire for using a prop that resembled a weapon of war. This Jeep was painted like an American flag, and it also had a fake machine gun mounted on top. Kansas gubernatorial candidate Chris Kobach rode in the Jeep in a parade. Now he's catching some heat for it.
What he did yesterday shows total ignorance, because you don't do that in public. I mean, whether it was a toy gun or it wasn't, that was just showing lack of consideration for the people, period.
I think everybody has the right to carry if they want to carry, and if they don't, then they don't have to. But they'll go run into somebody who has a gun when they need help.
Kobach responded to critics on Twitter. He said those who want to restrict the right to bear arms are misguided.
Could Californians get a tax break for collecting rainwater? A closer look now at Prop 72, which you'll see on tomorrow's ballot.
Please help us.
A cry for help from coal miners facing serious health issues. Why some who support President Trump worry he might abandon them. And taxpayers could end up paying for it.
Serena Williams runs into difficulties at the French Open. Has nothing to do with her opponent. Jill Arrington with the details. Next in sports.
Welcome back to sports. Well, some big news out of tennis where Serena Williams had to withdraw from the French Open this morning. The Royals and the Angels are in action on the diamond. Highlights coming up on Sports Central.
Thanks, Jill. Can President Trump pardon himself? He says yes. Next, we'll take a look at the legal questions surrounding the president's controversial claim.
Do you feel like over an apology?
Former President Bill Clinton says Monica Lewinsky won't be getting an apology. More from this interview still ahead. And could Californians get a tax break for collecting rainwater? A closer look at Prop 72 that you'll see on tomorrow's ballot.
Live from the Broadcast Center in Los Angeles, this is KCAL 9 News at 9.
Welcome back. I'm Jeff Vaughn.
And I'm Crystal Cruz. Today, President Donald Trump claimed he has the power to pardon himself, even though he says he hasn't done anything wrong.
But is it legal? Paula Reed takes a closer look tonight.
The president tweeted this morning that while he has no plans to pardon himself, he could if he wanted to. I have the absolute right to pardon myself, but why would I do that when I have done nothing wrong? He also continued his attacks on the legitimacy of the special counsel, tweeting that Robert Mueller's appointment is totally unconstitutional. The president's tweets echo comments from his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, Sunday.
There's nothing that limits the presidential power of pardon from a federal crime.
But Giuliani acknowledged that the question of whether the president can pardon himself is less about legality than politics.
The president of the United States pardoning himself would just be unthinkable, and it would lead to probably an immediate impeachment. You know, you get the House, Senate be under tremendous pressure.
Republican Congressman Will Hurd on Face the Nation.
Move. I think people would erupt. That would create outrage on both sides of the political aisle.
And today, Democratic Senator Ron Wyden, a staunch liberal, shuddered at the thought.
I certainly hope it never reaches that point. That would bring about a full-scale constitutional crisis.
But talk of pardons appears to be getting ahead of the investigation. The president has not decided whether to sit for an interview, and there's no guarantee of indictment, trial, or verdict, all of which would be challenged. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders today.
The president hasn't done anything wrong and wouldn't have any need for a pardon.
The issue of presidential pardons has never been tested in the courts. In fact, the only official guidance we have on this issue is a 1974 Justice Department memo that says the president cannot pardon himself under the fundamental legal principle that you can't be the judge in your own case. Paula Reed, the White House.
Former President George H.W. Bush is out of a hospital and on the mend in Maine tonight. Following another health scare, he was admitted last week for low blood pressure and fatigue. A spokesman says the 93-year-old deeply appreciates the care and good wishes that he received. This was Mr. Bush's second trip to a hospital following the death of his wife, Barbara, back in April.
And former President Bill Clinton is on a book tour promoting his first novel, co-authored by James Patterson. But the tour so far has been dominated by questions straight out of the history books about the darkest moments of his presidency. Here's Ed O'Keefe.
You are giving one side.
In a combative interview with NBC, former President Bill Clinton said the Me Too movement has not changed how he views his affair with White House intern Monica Lewinsky.
Did you ever apologize to her? No, yes, and nobody believes that I got out of that for free. I left the White House $16 million in debt.
Do you feel like you owe her an apology?
No, I do. I do not. I've never talked to her. But I did say publicly on more than one occasion that I was sorry. I misled people, including even my wife. I deeply regret that.
And you don't think a private apology is owed?
I dealt with it 20 years ago plus, and the American people, 2/3 of them stayed with me, and I've tried to do a good job since then with my life and with my work.
In a separate interview with CBS Sunday Morning, Mr. Clinton was asked about comments by New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who said last fall that he should have stepped down because of the Lewinsky scandal.
Well, I just disagree with her. I mean, I think, just you have to really ignore what the context was then. But, she's living in a different context, and she did it for different reasons.
In a tweet today, Lewinsky did not respond to Mr. Clinton directly, but said that she's grateful to people who've helped her evolve. Last fall, she told CBS This Morning that the years since the affair have been difficult.
There were many times over the last 2 decades when I wasn't sure I would make it.
In that NBC interview, Mr. Clinton said he likes the Me Too movement, calling it, quote, way overdue. But he added, quote, I still have some questions about some of the decisions which have been made. Ed O'Keefe, Washington.
And congressional candidates in close races are working overtime tonight ahead of tomorrow's primary. One of the more hotly contested races in the country is in the 48th congressional district.
After 3 decades in Congress, Orange County Republican Dana Rohrabacher is facing his most difficult re-election campaign. KCAL9 political reporter Dave Bryan takes a closer look at that race.
Because Rohrabacher can't defend his failed 30-year record in Congress.
Under fire from Democrats and Republicans like never before, Huntington Beach Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, a 30-year incumbent in a solid red district which is now trending blue, is fighting for his political life. And one of his leading opponents is a fellow Republican, former Orange County GOP Chairman Scott Baugh. And the TV ad attacks are vicious.
Politician Scott Baugh, Washington's so corrupt, he'd fit right in.
He's made lots of money as a lobbyist all these years. However, I think that I represent the values and the policies that my people believe in, and so I'm very confident in this election.
This is a Republican seat. It'll be a Republican seat, and I fully anticipate that Dana Rohrabacher and I will be in the general election facing off against each other.
Orange County Democrats believe this is their year in the 48th district.
Our district has been declared the most likely district to flip to blue in all of California.
Dana Rohrabacher's been here 30 years, and he's passed 3 pieces of legislation in those 30 years.
Rohrabacher has come under fire for his questionable ties to Russia. But while Rohrabacher may be vulnerable, the Democrats have their own bitter battle going on that could split the blue vote in the Tuesday primary. The state Democratic Party endorsed Dr. Hans Kierstead, but the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee has endorsed Harley Ruda.
One of the other tight congressional races is in the 25th district, which includes Santa Clarita, Simi Valley, Palmdale, and Lancaster. It stretches across northern LA County into a little piece of Ventura County. Republican Congressman Steve Knight is fighting for Democrats in that primary. And the only 2 top finishers, of course, will go on to the November general election. It's another Southern California race which could impact the balance of power in the House next year.
And tomorrow, voters will also decide on Proposition 72. If passed, it would help homeowners by excluding rainwater collection systems from being calculated in their property taxes. This Bay Area homeowner helped inspire Prop 72. Her elaborate rainwater storage system caught the eye of a state senator who authored the measure.
Rainwater. This is capturing water from the sky, but in my mind, it's much more important to deal with water than energy, because water, you can only live 2 to 3 days without it.
California voters have approved similar measures in the 1980s and 1990s to support installation of solar panels. And we'll have complete coverage of tomorrow's primary. Stay with KCAL 9 News and KCAL.com for analysis and results.
We'll still hit Facebook's latest data scandal.
And the UK reveals a new strategy for stopping terror attacks after reports that dozens of convicted terrorists could soon be released from prison.
And how children of fallen service members are helping others experiencing similar pain.
And we're getting a look outside right now. Low cloud cover moving in and a cool down on our hands. I'll have your forecast next. Jeff and Crystal, back to you.
Please help us.
Next, a cry for help from coal miners facing serious health issues. Why some who support President Trump worry he might abandon them, and taxpayers could end up paying for it.
And confronting terror in the UK by Britain could soon be dealing with the prison release of dozens of convicted terrorists.
Right, okay. Quick. They're on their way already. Yes, I know it's burning, but they are on their way. You've only just called, as long as you're okay. Yeah? Okay.
Well, that was audio of the first emergency call last year's deadly fire at a London high-rise apartment, the Grenfell Tower. That killed more than 70 people. Residents were mistakenly told to stay in their units as the flames spread. This according to a fire expert who testified at a hearing today on the tragedy. The fire engineer also said residents were not told to evacuate for more than an hour. And authorities in the UK have revamped their strategy to prevent terror attacks a year after several deadly assaults in the British capital.
And the changes come amid reports that dozens of convicted extremists will be released from British prisons within the next few months. Tina Kraus reports from London.
To remember all who were lost.
British leaders laid flowers on London Bridge Sunday to mark the one-year anniversary of the van and knife attack that killed 8 people. Now the government is rolling out a new plan that allows security forces to share more information about potential terrorists.
The aim of this is to ensure that our response to terrorism is second to none, and that we are doing everything within our power to prevent terror on our streets.
In a major shift, Britain's MI5 intelligence agency will declassify information on people who've appeared on its radar but are not currently under investigation. Local businesses will be able to flag potential dangers if a customer is stockpiling large amounts of chemicals or acting suspiciously when renting a vehicle.
Ultimately, our approach is about ensuring that there are no safe spaces for terrorists.
Britain's Guardian newspaper reports nearly half of terror-related sentences handed down in the UK between 2007 and 2016 expired this year. That could put dozens of convicted terrorists back on the streets. UK authorities say while Islamist militants still pose the biggest terror threat, the risks from far-right extremists are also growing. Tina Kraus, London.
And UK security forces expect the threat from Islamist terror to remain at its current heightened level of severe for at least another 2 years, meaning a terror attack is highly likely.
Former Veteran Affairs nominee Rear Admiral Ronnie Jackson officially under investigation tonight. Defense Department's Inspector General launched that probe. Jackson withdrew his nomination as VA Secretary amid allegations of misconduct, including drinking on the job, casually dispensing prescription drugs, and creating a hostile work environment. An Inspector General spokesperson would not say if the investigation is administrative or criminal in nature. Well, former coal miners are tonight worried about an upcoming tax cut that could affect their medical care for black lung. A massive cut set for the end of the year could cause a critical trust fund for miners to fall further and further into debt. Elizabeth Cohen explains taxpayers could end up paying that bill.
Kenny Fleming loved mining here in the hills of Kentucky.
I worked here for 16 years.
So it's no surprise that he voted for Donald Trump.
We are going to put our coal miners back to work. They have not been treated well, but they're going to be treated well now.
But Fleming is worried that Trump might not live up to his campaign promises. These are images of Fleming's lungs.
So this cloudiness is what we refer to as black lung disease.
That's true. We're diagnosing more and more cases.
It's an old disease that's making a comeback. Doctors recently identified the largest cluster ever found, 416 advanced cases. Miners' lungs turn black and stiff with coal dust. It's incurable and deadly. But at least Fleming doesn't have to worry about medical bills. His health care has been paid for by a federal tax on coal mining companies. But in the future, he might not be covered. The tax that's been helping him, it gets cut in half at the end of this year. And President Trump's proposed budget does nothing to stop that cut from happening. According to a new government report obtained by CNN, if that tax cut goes through, the fund for the miners could go $15 billion into debt by 2050. Congressman Bobby Scott represents coal miners in Virginia.
The problem with letting the debt explode is that once it becomes clearly unsustainable, there'll be pressure to cut benefits.
So if these benefits go away, how do you think this community is going to feel?
Betrayed.
The Trump administration says if the tax on coal companies isn't enough, the government can just borrow money from the taxpayers. A Labor Department spokesman telling CNN, miners who are entitled to federal black lung benefits will continue to receive those benefits. But Scott says borrowing money from taxpayers isn't the solution. He's fighting to keep coal companies paying the current tax.
The last option, the last thing we ought to consider is letting the tax expire and letting the problem get worse.
Kenny Fleming just wants to make sure that coal miners aren't abandoned.
If you could talk to President Trump right now, what would you say to him?
Please help us. Supposedly, he was for the forgotten man and woman. And if this isn't addressed, then that's a bunch of people that are forgotten.
More than 14,000 miners depend on the Black Lung Disability Trust Fund to pay medical bills and other expenses when they are too sick to work. It's supposed to be funded by a tax on coal companies, as the package said so, but a new report found the tax has almost never been enough to cover the expenses. So right now the fund is $4.3 billion in debt to taxpayers.
High temperatures and powerful winds are fueling wildfires in the Southwest. The largest fires are in Colorado and New Mexico, where thousands of acres have burned and neighborhoods are being threatened. Hundreds of people were forced from their homes. One of the hardest areas hit is a section of northern New Mexico. Some residents said they had to pack up and leave very quickly.
It's just weird. You know, we're a small town, so there's not much ever going on, but just unreal, like you're in a dream.
It was like black smoke, and it was pretty high. I didn't see the flames, but I just saw the smoke and it looked close.
Investigators have yet to pinpoint what sparked the major wildfires.
We'll take a close look at a city vehicle in Sacramento because they have gone now digital. Mayor Darrell Steinberg showed off one of the new cars with that digital license plate. A digital plate costs about $700, but the city says they got a good deal at $299 each, plus a monthly fee. Officials say the plates on that 24 Chevy Volts will be like mini billboards. They will show public service messages like street closures, ads for city services, even Amber Alerts.
And I have a bigger motive here, and that is I want to continue to send the signal that Sacramento should be the center of all these technologies.
With the digital plate, a driver can register their car online. Plus, the plates keep track of vehicles, kind of like GPS.
If your dream is to travel to the moon, you'll have to wait a little bit longer. SpaceX says it's postponing blasting space tourists into orbit until at least mid-2019. The company says the decision means it won't be offering a loop around the moon to private individuals until a later date.
Many people furious about learning that Facebook had data sharing arrangements with at least 60 device makers over the past 10 years. New York Times says the social media giant shared personal information from users and their friends with dozens of companies, including Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Samsung, among others. Well, Facebook says its data deals were tightly controlled and above board. Most of the agreements are still in place, but Facebook says it has also started winding them down.
And stock posted gains across the board today, with tech companies, retailers, and household good companies taking the lead. The Dow picked up 179 points, the Nasdaq closed 52 points higher, and the S&P gained 12.
Well, it seems a deadly accident in Southwest Airlines jet back in April has taken a major toll on their business. A passenger died when a fan blade broke off of an engine and then shattered a window, partially sucking one of the passengers out of the plane. Southwest Airlines then pulled ads after the incident, which is standard procedure, but customers started buying fewer tickets. Airline says the drop in bookings is more than 3%, which is much worse than it had anticipated.
And next at 9, how children of fallen service members are helping others experiencing similar pain. The president and first lady invited Gold Star families to a White House reception today to honor them and the loved ones they lost. And tonight, CBS Evening News anchor Jeff Glor introduces us to the children of America's fallen heroes, now helping others through their grief.
There he is. Here's Daddy.
Brinley and Ansley Thompson come here often to visit their dad.
He'll be so proud of you.
Todd Thompson served 2 tours in Iraq. He died in 2012.
Brinley, I'm Jeff. Nice to meet you.
Ansley.
We met the Thompson girls here at Arlington Cemetery's Section 60, the final resting place for the men and women who died in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Tell me what it's like visiting here, Ansley.
When you come here, you think back at the funeral and when was the last time you said goodbye.
There are more than 5,000 Gold Star kids around the country grieving the death of a parent, sibling, or close relative. Many of them come together each year at the Good Grief Camp, run by TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors.
So when we help others, we feel better.
Here, they find empathy from legacy mentors, kids who have experienced the worst kind of pain, now remarkably helping others through theirs. Kids like Brooke Niren, who lost her father, Nathaniel Niren, in Iraq 13 years ago. The knock on the door still echoes.
I saw 2 men standing there in uniform, and I knew exactly what it meant. And the whole time, I just stood there saying, I know that he's dead, because why else would they come to my house? And I felt like I lost my whole world. He was so important to me.
Brooke entered the Good Grief Camp 6 months later.
I really don't know where I would be if I didn't have TAPS. You know, they were the ones there for me when I felt like no one else was.
She is now mentoring 8-year-old Adrienne Williams.
I never thought I'd be able to relate to an 8-year-old, but here we are sharing very similar stories about our dads.
Corbin Cabrera, now 19, first attended the Good Grief Camp when he was 15, after losing his dad, David Cabrera.
I was lucky enough to have a mentor who could get through to me in a way that helped me tremendously. How's it going?
Good.
Corbin is now Brinley's mentor.
Does Corbin help make you less sad?
Yes.
I see the look on Brinley's face when your name is mentioned. That's pretty great.
There's nothing like it.
All right, let's go put it over there.
Because not only do we get to help the kids, in a way the kids help us.
For these Gold Star kids,
there you go.
Grief and pride come in equal measure.
I put that one in.
At the end of the day, when I can help somebody else not have to go through some of the stuff that I went through before I came to TAPS, it means the world to me.
I think you're doing that with Brinley.
That's the goal. We can only hope.
We're happy because we're all with each other, and we all feel a million different emotions all at the same time. There's still that sense of happiness and hope that we all feel because we know we're together and we know that we're not alone in the world.
Oh, what a great story. Thanks for watching KCAL 9 News at 9. KCAL 9 News at 10 starts right now.